This episode of EMS One-Stop is brought to you by Lexipol, the experts in policy, training, wellness support and grants assistance for first responders and government leaders. To learn more, visit lexipol.com. That's lexipol.com.
The devices that are out there, actually are not very expensive. The vehicle they're in, there's $250,000 vehicle, but most of them are under $200 to avoid this from occurring. And in my opinion, there's just no reason why ambulances are being stolen with the current technology that's out there.
Hello and welcome back to another edition of EMS One-Stop. I'm your host, Rob Lawrence, and I'm afraid I'm going to continue on my soapbox in this edition. You will have seen from some of my written work that ambulances continue to be stolen every 2 weeks in the United States. We've had some great content from our good friend and influencer, Jimmy Apple, on this. But actually, if we peel this back a little bit, having your vehicle immobilized comes back down into some of the requirements of the CAAS GVS Ground Vehicle Standards. And Ground Vehicle Standards themselves have just gone through an upgrade, and we're on version 4.0. And that's the real topic of today, to talk about the Ground Vehicle Standards. But of course, we'll come back and I'll get on my soapbox, and so will my guest. And so welcome, Mark Postma. How are you, sir?
I'm very good, Rob. How are you?
I am great. So for the benefit of those folk out there, please introduce yourself, obviously the job you do, and obviously the committee and the association that you're working with.
Sure. My name's Mark Postma, and most of you know me. I have been in EMS my entire career. Was served in Davenport, Iowa for about 20 years, and been in Florida now for 20 years, working for Paramedics Plus, Patient Care EMS, and our flagship operation here, Sunstar Paramedics. Still work for them doing government affairs, but also on a part-time basis, and also have become the CAAS GVS administrator, which is also just a slight time, job. But it is an offshoot of CAAS, Commission on Accreditation of Ambulance Services, but it is a standalone, and we developed these standards back in 2016 when we put together an ad hoc committee. First meeting was held in Las Vegas at a AAA meeting, and we put together these ambulance standards, which now have been adopted by 35 states plus as their standard for ambulances in their state.
That's fantastic. Also, I have to do one of these and for full disclosure moments. And for full disclosure, Mark was once my boss. So who the hell would want to manage me? But you had a go at it. So well done.
Yes, we did. We did work together back in.
We did. It was fantastic, actually. I have to say, we had some fun delivering patient care, of course. So, and actually, that kind of comes back to how I got you on the podcast, because we were talking about all of this vehicle theft stuff, which we'll cover later. And you sent me an email reminding me from 2020 or something that we were putting them in our trucks. And of course, you reminded me also that since you put them in, you've not had one stolen. So again, we'll park that. Stay with CAAS. So you mentioned it, and I like to kind of break things down a little bit for those that are listening. CAAS, Commission on Accreditation of Ambulance Services, ground vehicle standards that are setting the requirement, I guess it's fair to say, for the construction and possibly use of our ambulances. So first of all, talk about what's in those standards and what does it cover?
Yeah, Rob. So the standards really were, put together back in 2016, like I said, because at that time, the KKK spec, which is a government ambulance buying spec, stated that they thought that they were probably going to get out of the business of keeping the spec up to date. So ourselves, the American Ambulance Association, garnered the ad hoc committee together, multiple associations, and we can discuss those. And we come up with the spec, and it really was something that looked really close to the K spec at the time. If you remember, the NFPA did something very similar. There are two standards, or actually right now there's still three standards. The K spec is still alive and well, and so we have three. However, a lot of states have adopted CAAS GVS and NFPA for specs for ambulance inspectors throughout the United States. So, and it's been updated. Like you said, it's been this is number 4, and we actually have updated the specification every 3 years, and we're doing that based on that's what ANSI recommends. We are not ANSI accredited, but we do follow their process and procedure. So every 3 years we do the update. So we are just starting number 4, and we just went through the whole process following the ANSI spec of how you do standards, how standards, I should say, are recognized in the United States.
So let's just sort of drill into something you said there. Of course, we have these ground vehicle standards 4.0, and we have a similar or uh, sort of a companion set of standards in NFPA. And so, how far apart are they, or are they, they relatively mirror each other?
Well, they somewhat are different. Obviously the NFPA standards are geared more towards a fire response rescue unit ambulance, I would describe it
Yeah.
as, where we've really focused on EMS directly, and we in CAAS GVS 3.0 we adopted remounting. So who we're building these specs for, not only for the states to adopt, but we're really building them for the manufacturers and the remounters. To date, there's no remounters registration by any other organization in the United States. So we have 20 manufacturers in the United States and Canada that are registered for the CAAS GVS, and we probably of those that they probably build 95% of all ambulances in Canada and the United States at this time. We also, so if you can imagine this, just merely 3 years ago, when it came to remounters, we had 0 because we developed a standard. And to date, we have 65 remounters. Those are separate companies. 10 of those are the manufacturers of those 20, but the other 55 are standalone operations. Some of them are dealers for the manufacturers, and some of them are providers, such as ourselves. We actually do remounting. We're a CAAS GVS remounter, also our company, and so we're seeing providers who've gotten into this too. So it's really a combination of both brand new manufacturing and then remounting.
So let's stay with remounting for a second, Mark, because I had thought that remounting at one point was on its way out because we had to have new vehicles and new clinical, modules on the back of the truck, and then so that seems to have flip flopped. I certainly my first opening 10 years of experience in the US was that we had, by the time I'd finished my 10 years in Richmond, we had some trucks that had I knew the same box, but we had 3 different new chassis underneath them because, of course, the box was solid, sound, well constructed, and wasn't put through the rigor of the running gear, right? And so obviously that's the reason for taking the box off, putting a new chassis under, etc. So that now seems to be thriving.
Yeah, and it exponentially got bigger during COVID. So when we seen the manufacturers had to pull back during COVID due to a bunch of reasons, mainly is they couldn't get the actual chassis from the big manufacturers, but also they had workforce reductions, and we seen delays in ambulances for 3-4 years. In fact, even today, if you want a brand new vehicle for next year, you probably better be, putting your name in right now to get something for next year. So we still see that backlog. I will tell you the Type 2s seem to be pretty much on track for new Type 2s. But we still see type 1 and type 3s where there's a pretty good lag out there, especially if you're doing big quantities of vehicles. There's a pretty big lag out there. So at that, since that time, the remounting business has gotten really, really big. The numbers in regard to new vehicles is probably in the 6,500 range. But what the numbers are in the remount business is hard to determine. But I would think that it's probably pretty close to the same number. I mean, it's a pretty big number
Yeah.
of remounted vehicles that are out there.
So that leads me down another rabbit hole, which I'm going to go down, of course. Yeah. So is it fair to say we are still seeing that lag of order to delivery of new vehicles then? That's still a thing.
Well, yes, it's still a thing for type 1 and type 3s. Obviously those vehicles, they're made from the ground up. And it was normal for 90 to 120 days. But I know we're putting orders in for 3 years out. We're giving our manufacturers, a heads up. And I would imagine most other organizations are doing the same. For, folks who have one or two ambulances to get in to get in line. You have to get in line. It's the manufacturers, want people to get the orders in as quick as they can, so they have good lead times on them.
And I guess excuse me, I guess the takeaway here, of course, is that organizations have to have a vehicle replacement plan. It's no good going to city council or to your board of directors on day 365 and say, I need a new truck for New Year day one, funded, please, paid for, etc. That's not going to happen. So, and of course, I certainly, in my experience, have seen in the public sector where they have sort of zero balance budgeting, so you have to spend all your money by the end of the year. You can't actually carry forward capital in order to replace your vehicles, and that's a management headache. And that's something I think is the people to think about, that we need to be able to forecast our vehicle requirement now for 2 or 3 years time. I think you said that, but I think it's worth really, creating a takeaway point from this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's good to have a plan and also multiple manufacturers. You can do your best to maybe get tied to one manufacturer, but in the current situation we're in now, multiple manufacturers is probably helpful. At least
Yeah.
especially if you're dealing with a financial scenario that you spoke of, where those dollars got to be spent.
Yeah, and also I don't know how many RFPs you and I have jointly read together where it says, you have to start your service within 6 months and you have to have 50 new trucks. Of course, that scenario now surely can't be played out for real and in real life.
Yeah, highly doubt it can be played out by one manufacturer. It can probably be played out with multiple manufacturers, but that's a pretty heavy lift for one manufacturer at this time. Correct.
That's great. Well, thank you, Mark, for the first half. Obviously, setting ourselves up. We went off on a few tangents there, but actually, every time you said something, there was a but moment. So let's just do a quick reset and have a word from our sponsor.
Lexipol empowers first responders and public servants to best meet the needs of their residents safely and responsibly. Serving more than 2 million public safety and government professionals in over 8,000 agencies and municipalities, Lexipol offers a range of solutions that includes policies, training, behavioral health resources, news and analysis, and grant assistance services for law enforcement, fire and rescue, EMS, local government, and other agencies dedicated to public safety. To learn more, visit lexipol.com. That's LEXIPOL.com.
And we're back. That was the voice of Jim Dudley, who hosts Policing Matters over on Police One. And if you get a second and you're interested in other sections of public safety, go over to Police One and have a listen to Jim. Always has amazing guests with a range of topics that you can only imagine. Also, please make sure that you like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast or your vodcast on. Remember, we are not only on wherever you get your podcast from, we're also on YouTube. So not only can you hear us, you can come over and see Mark and I sitting there looking at each other as well. So it's all good stuff, and you get to choose the medium that you take your education and your podcast and your vodcast from. So I've got Mark Postma here, and we're talking about CAAS GVS 4.0, the new standard. We had a great discussion before the break and actually got into a sort of couple of sidebar issues around particularly, the vehicle standards themselves and remounting. But going back to the standards, Mark, I mean, what's, the sort of big ticket change or the big thing that really marks the difference between version 3 and version 4 of the CAAS GVS standards?
Sure, Rob. So really important to know that to follow ANSI standards. So we had two public comment periods, and those were posted on multiple websites. Public comment by providers or ambulance services or even manufacturers that could provide information on the current standards. And I believe we had about 30 inquiries or suggestions. And the ad hoc committee goes through those. And it's really a consensus-based group, and thumbs up, thumbs down. We had a lot of little, what I would call language changes, but we really didn't have any large issues to deal with, other than the safety around the stretcher and the actual modifications that have to be done, and to get to the actual standard on it. So it's very complicated, as you know. The structure systems, when you and I were out on the street, were one thing, but they're very complex today, and they're really tied together by manufacturers, and those manufacturers are meeting SAE requirements on pull testing. Those are dynamic tests that have to be done on the vehicle, meaning they got to be it's not a static test, it's a dynamic test. And they have to build that around those vehicles, and they have to meet that SAE. And there's several laboratories nationwide that they have to take a vehicle in, and they have to pass these tests. So, and one of the issues that we have had is the stretcher being able to meet those standards, or if service wants to upgrade, that they'd have to take it back to the manufacturer. And that was really inconvenient, especially for small services that have only maybe one ambulance or two ambulances, because this takes a little bit of time. So this is it's pretty complex. We've never really done this before, but we actually went to the manufacturers that are registered. We have 20, like I mentioned before, and we said, hey, we need to improve this standard, and we need to make it so it's user friendly. And it was really good. We had one of the top engineers for the ASTM, which is actually the association the manufacturers are in. They have their own association, and they brought us back a really good standard on how we can actually get it so it works for both sides, both the manufacturer, the remounters, and the providers, so that they could meet these standards, but also be able to upgrade their vehicles without having any service disruption at the local level. So that is by far the biggest change we had, but mostly it's just a refresh. And there wasn't a lot of other changes that we had.
Excellent. Of course, yes. So you have a multitude of vehicle manufacturers. We have a multitude of stretcher manufacturers. And of course, the two must meet in the middle and meet securely. Otherwise, we don't want to talk about the otherwise. But so therefore, the testing is absolutely vital. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and it's interesting to note that when, if you go to a conference and you're looking, we're seeing a lot of the manufacturers now, not only the structures, but some of the other equipment, stating in their pamphlets that they meet CAAS GVS, standards. So it's always kind of good to look for the mark to make sure that these have been through the appropriate testing when you're purchasing these things. They're very, the costs now are $30,000 to $50,000, depending on all the things that you add on to them, right?
Oh, yeah. I've been involved in a number of political visits. I know you have as well, where you've had your elected official over. And actually, I learnt a top tip a while ago, where starting putting price tags on the equipment, so that when that elected official got into the back of the truck, you're sitting on this stretcher. It's actually a $29,000 couch that you're sitting on. The monitor over there is a $35,000 piece of television. And really to bring home just the cost of doing business is important and essential. And of course, another piece, Senator, is actually this vehicle is exceptionally safe, and here's the standard that we comply to. So again, it's another talking point for folk coming in. Mark, let's pull our soapboxes out now and talk about something that you and I are absolutely passionate about. And let me be British for a second. A lot of my Brit mates are just absolutely astounded at the level of ambulance theft here in the United States. And of course, we have, and this is a shameless plug for emsintel.org, which is the AAA and Aim High program and project to actually catch all of this sort of news, all the news from the news source. And of course, we're on EMS One. EMS One do a lot of rewriting and a lot of rebroadcasting, but actually the important bit, particularly for briefing elected officials, for briefing journalists, is actually to have the news source. And so what EMS Intel looks at the news source in order to kind of, collate lists of stuff. And of course, one of the things that fell off the page at me early on is that once every 2 weeks, an ambulance in the United States is stolen. And, now, of course, CAAS standards, there is actually a clause and a requirement in the CAAS standard, not GVS, but CAAS. If you're going to be a CAAS member, your vehicles have to be fitted with immobilization devices. The GVS standards 4.0 and all the way through, I think I found in there also. The chassis shall be equipped with an anti-theft device to prevent the vehicle from being driven by an unauthorized operator. And so, that's in there too. It's not a great stretch, Mark, to immobilize a vehicle, even in an aftermarket sense. Discuss.
Well, this is, you mentioned the email when your last article came out. I went back and I know you and I had talked about this. So in 2018, you and I were discussing, because you were overseeing a pretty large fleet out there in Alameda, 60 plus. And, we had about 80 here in Florida. And we were, we really wanted to get this. We both had incursions, and some stolen and some driven after being stolen. So it really doesn't end up well normally. And so, the devices that are out there, actually are not very expensive. The vehicle they're in, there's $250,000 vehicle, but, this is most of them are under $200 to avoid this from occurring. And in my opinion, there's just no reason why ambulances are being stolen with the current technology that's out there. So I think that's really important. It is a CAAS standard, whether it's a remount or it's a brand new vehicle. But one of the things I really want to hit on, Rob, which I think is key, is that the second sentence of the standard says the device shall automatically engage when vehicle is placed in a park and shall not require any other actions of the operator. So a lot of the devices that are on the market have a key fob or something of that nature. And it's just like telling your employees that you want them to lock the doors every time that they get out of the scene. And we know that doesn't happen. Whenever we have, a possibility of it has to be an interaction of an employee to make it happen. If they forget just one time, it just doesn't work. So automatic devices, the standard is very, very specific. It has to be an automatic device, and meaning that it's going to lock down if they get up, put it in park, and jump out and go run to take care of a patient. That vehicle is going to be secure by that happening without the paramedic or the EMT or whoever it is, driving the vehicle. And it really is critical that it's automatic. And there aren't very many products on the market. I'm told there's two. And I know we purchased one. It's very cheap. It's been great. I mean, since 2018, Rob, our fleet, which you were a part of, we have not stolen vehicle. I don't even want to say that because we have around 400 vehicles.
Yeah, don't talk it up.
But and we have dash cams too. We have dash cams of people trying to steal them, and most of the time it's normally at an emergency room. Most of the time is where the vehicle will get stolen at. Not all the time. A second probably place would be on a scene, but mostly it is at an emergency room where people want to either keep the heat or the air conditioning going. which, in these climates that we're in, you need to have that. But these devices are readily available, easy to install, and it really should be, it should be mandatory, no doubt about that.
Indeed. I'm just going to plug a couple of things. Shamelessly plug my article, which curiously was GTA Grand Theft Ambulance, and where we not only did I talk about the frequency of ambulance thefts, but also drilled down into the data and the information we had to talk about, time of day, to talk about location. Well, the location's easy. It's on scene or at hospital. When you get out of the truck, think about the security of the truck. We also talk about the patients, and I'm not going to dwell on this, but obviously there are a lot of patients are emerging from hospital, seeing the truck there available to them and getting in and driving them away. And again, you can read about that in my article, which is in the show notes as well. Also, thank you to Jimmy Apple, friend of the show, previous guest, who did a piece in one of his TikToks. And the comments, Mark, were, as you would expect, the combination of, how can we let this happen? I wouldn't want this to happen to me. And, whoops, how embarrassing if it happens to you. And, I agree with all three, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah. So, Mark, thank you very much. I always ask this question at the end of every vodcast. Is there anything I've forgotten to ask or anything you need to tell us before we go?
Well, I just want to kind of let everybody know we continue to grow the Ground Vehicle Standard. It really has become the standard that most vehicles are being, that state EMS officials are using. And one of the things that you can do is you can actually have an exception, okay? But the exception has to be documented by those manufacturers. And so let's just take the anti-theft device. You can build an ambulance and not have the anti-theft, but it's an exception. But state inspectors should not allow an exception like that to go through. And we really need to get with all the vehicles coming, as people replace these vehicles, these anti-theft devices should be, just hands down number one. But just wanted to know that how could it be built without one? Unfortunately, there are, everybody wants to build an ambulance how they want to build it, but there are those exceptions out there. But most state inspectors, you know what, they say no exceptions. So that's But I just wanted to add that in there because sometimes there is a little bit of that.
No, and actually, if you're not, a CAAS member, or if you're not, compliant with CAAS GVS, there's always going to be an employee committee that comes together to say what's on your ambulance going to look like. We spend a lot of time worrying about where things are going to go in the box. We spend a lot of time thinking about when I pull this particular locker open on the outside, what's going to be in there, how do we secure it? Add one more thing to your checklist. Can the vehicle indeed be immobilized? So it doesn't take much to ask that question. And as you've heard Mark say, the solution is really inexpensive. So there was that. Mark, thank you very much for talking about that, for joining me on my soapbox. So thank you also for the briefing on CAAS GVS 4.0. The links to that will be in the show notes. The links to the article that I'm talking about will be in the show notes. And so read it all there. It will be there. Mark, for the moment, and I hope to have you back sometime soon. Thank you very much and for joining us.
Great seeing you.
Great seeing you too. So that was Mark Postma, and talking about CAAS GVS 4.0, talking about vehicle construction and use standards, essentially, talking about how we can make the vehicle safe and, of course, how we can make the vehicle secure. So that was fantastic. Please make sure that you like and subscribe. Also, follow us every week as we drop a new edition of EMS One-Stop, both on audio and on video, wherever you get your podcast from, and on YouTube. So that's it for another week. I've been Rob Lawrence. Thank you to Mark Postma. Until next time, bye for now.